Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to wait a few more minutes to give some more people a chance to join us. So we'll start about 7:05, but thank you for taking the time today. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started today. Thank you again for joining today. My name is Ted Van Houten. I am the project manager with DDOT for the Tenleytown Multimodal Access Project. This is our first public meeting for the project. So thank you all for joining us. I'm joined by several colleagues at DDOT, as well as several colleagues from our construction or from our consulting team that are joining us today, and you'll hear some of them during the question and answer period. So this is our virtual public meeting, and before we begin, we're just gonna go through some basic controls for WebEx to help you participate. Some of you may be very familiar with WebEx, some of you less so. So we just want to make sure that everybody has this base of information. This is an open meeting, and as required by DC code, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file with both audio and video will be shared on DDOT's YouTube channel within 7 days after today's date. And this meeting is also being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page. If you don't wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You can enter questions or comments in the Q&A field, which we'll review, and a member of the consulting team will read your message that way. And if you need technical support during the meeting, please call 202-309-3491. Okay, so everyone is on mute and you cannot unmute yourself. We're happy to unmute you during the Q&A and comment period at the end of the meeting. This helps to make sure the meeting runs smoothly and that we don't have any auditory disruptions. If you'd like to speak, you'll need to use the raise hand feature, which is the little hand right there. For closed captions, WebEx has automatic closed captions that are generated, and those are available during the meeting. You can click the CC icon in the lower left corner of the window, which looks like that, the CC with the little talk box, to turn on closed captions. And there are additional settings so you can adjust the appearance to your liking. If you're on the mobile application, you can click the 3-dot icon and scroll down and select closed captions that way. And for that, make sure your toggle switch is blue. So video, your video is off by default, and you won't be able to share video during this meeting. It's just too much bandwidth. But if you'd like to speak, we can definitely make that happen. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like to speak up, please raise your hand. This indicates to us that you would like to speak. Again, you can use the raise hand icon on the bottom of the WebEx window, or you can press Control, Shift, and R on your keyboard to raise your hand. If you join via browser or a mobile app, you click the 3-dot icon to select raise hand. And if you dialed in by phone, you dial *3 to raise your hand. Q&A, and we'll go through this again before we start the Q&A section. But if you have a question during the presentation, you can send it via the Q&A feature, and that should be open by default when you joined. You click the 3-dot icon in the bottom right side of the WebEx window, and then you select Q&A. And then a new panel or window will appear. In the Ask field, select All Panelists, and then you can click the text box to type your question, and then you press Enter to send it. And you can do that anytime during the presentation. We will get to them. We'll get to as many questions as possible at the end of the meeting or after the presentation is done. And if you join via browser or mobile app, you click the Q&A or question mark icon to access the Q&A. And if you dial in by phone, you dial *3 to use the raise hand function, and that indicates to us that you'd like to speak and ask a question. If you've dialed in by phone, you will have to speak. I don't believe there's a way for you to text a question. Okay, so our agenda today, we'll do a brief introduction, project overview, current conditions, previous studies, We'll talk about the scope of the project that we're working on right now, talk about next steps of what you can expect, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. So the project overview, our project area is the area around the east entrance of the Tenleytown Metro Station. It's 40th Street and Fort Drive between Albemarle and Chesapeake, and then Albemarle between 40th Fort Drive and Wisconsin Avenue. So the goal of our project, we're developing pedestrian, streetscape, and multimodal safety and access improvements for the area surrounding the east entrance of the Tenleytown Metro Station. And there's our study area, our project area again. Some of the improvements that we'll be looking at are improving public spaces, improving sidewalks, redesigning. One big intersection we're looking at is this 40th Fort Drive Albemarle intersection, but also the Wisconsin Albemarle intersection and the other intersections of Brandywine and Chesapeake as well. Improving crosswalks, improving bus shelters and bus layover space, improving streetscape and landscaping, looking at the bicycle infrastructure, and improving safety where there are intersections of curb cuts and driveways. So we'll go through some current conditions by mode, and we'll start by walking. There's a variety of destinations that are adjacent to the project area. There's Jackson Reed High School, the Aquatic Center, a number of transit locations, the Metro Rail and the bus stops. And then there's residences and buildings as well. One feature of this area, because of the high school, school dismissal results in a major boost to the pedestrian activity in the area. There are about 5,000 students that travel through the project area on an average school day. And unlike other stations on this part of the Red Line in DC, this metro station has almost an equal amount of weekday riders entering and exiting during the peak periods. So, you know, in some other stations, you have a bunch of people, and this is, you have a bunch of people going in entering the station during a peak hour, and in a more residential location, you have a lot of people going into the station at the peak hour in the AM, and then exiting the peak hour in the PM. In this station, that ratio of people coming in and coming out is really equal during the AM and PM peak, which is, again, not every metro station is like that. So some other current conditions for walking. There are pedestrian safety improvements that are needed here, and general public realm enhancements as well. Some locations of pedestrian vehicle conflict points, of course, this isn't all of them, but some of the bigger ones are the alley network between Wisconsin Avenue and 40th Street. We see a lot of people walk through. This is the alley, this is the Wawa on the right, and this is the Panera. A lot of people will walk through this alley to get to bus stops, to get to the high school, just to get to points east or west, and that causes, you know, some conflicts with drivers that are also in this space. There's a break in the median between 40th Street and Fort Drive near Albemarle, and that's another conflict point because pedestrians are crossing there as well. And then we've seen, and there's a lot of mid-block crossings of 40th Fort between Albemarle and Brandywine. For biking, there are bicycle lanes on 40th and Fort Drive. They are unprotected, and there's several potential conflicts. You've got drivers both driving through. They may be just driving through. They might be picking something up. They might be parking. You've got buses, you know, both Metro bus, but also the AU shuttle buses, Sibley shuttles. So there's a lot of conflict points for bicycle. For bikes that are trying to get through here. One maneuver that's especially challenging is, and we have a picture of it here, is a cyclist on 40th Street who's trying to make this left onto Albemarle Street here. that's an especially challenging traffic maneuver. And there are Capital Bike Share stations nearby, but there's not one right outside the station on the east entrance. And that's something that we would like to see to make that transition from bike share to transit as seamless as possible. Current conditions for the bus. Tenleytown is a critical transit hub for this part of the city. There's a connection to Metro Rail, of course. There are north-south routes on both Wisconsin and Nebraska Avenue. And then there are several routes that really take you across town to Columbia Heights, to Shaw, and U Street, to Adams Morgan, to Capitol Hill, and to neighborhoods east of the river as well. All are a one-seat bus ride from Tenleytown. And several routes terminate here, which means that buses need layover space before they pick back up and go back the other direction after finishing one route. And the weekday service, it varies between 6 and 35 minutes, depending on the route of the Metro bus. There are also American University shuttles here. The weekday service is about 15 minutes for that. And then there's a shuttle that goes to Sibley Hospital, and the weekday service for that is about 45 minutes. So this is just a quick look at the Metro bus map showing Tenleytown here. Of course, the black here is the Metro Rail, but all of these red and blue lines are buses, and you can see how many different directions you can go from Tenleytown. So the current the existing bus facilities are inadequate for the number of bus users. We've had some discussions with WMATA where they've indicated that not every bus stop has benches or a shelter. And then we also mentioned the need for bus layover space. There's again a number of routes that terminate here. Current conditions for driving and parking. This intersection of 40th, Fort, and Albemarle is pretty large. There are not the clearest sight lines to get through that intersection. If you're on 40th Street wanting to continue south through Albemarle, you need to turn and then turn again. So that's certainly not ideal. And Albemarle between 40th Fort is often congested. East of here, Albemarle, there's parking on the south side, but not on the north side. And then Albemarle between 40th Fort and Wisconsin, there is parking. That's off-peak parking on both sides, but we have seen some illegal parking or standing during the rush hour, which leads to congestion. And then on 40th Street and Fort Drive, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but 40th Street is DDOT public space, but Fort Drive is administered by WMATA, and the parking regulations are inconsistent along those two streets. So it could be confusing which street you park on and what the exact rates are. So current conditions for driving and parking. We've done some traffic analysis, and this is showing that. So peak hour observations show that traffic from school drop-offs in the morning are adding to queues that can extend to almost to Albemarle Street, and that impacts bus movements as well as cars. And then the queues on Albemarle Street itself, so the backups on Albemarle Street, extend to crosswalks and intersections. So that impacts pedestrian safety, that impacts other drivers trying to get through, that impacts buses, and it again leads to congestion on the street and at the intersection of 40th and Fort. So some previous studies that we're looking at. Some of them are the DC Comp Plan, which was the comprehensive plan, which was recently updated, which proposed minimizing off-street parking, providing more dedicated space for transit, access improvements around Metro Station, wider sidewalks, bicycle improvements. The Rock Creek West 2 livability study, which is about 10 years old at this point, but it recommended a redesign of 40th Street and Fort Drive, including some changes to traffic circulation and parking. Move DC has several improvements for the general area related to transit, parking, pedestrian, bicycle access, freight, all sorts of things are in Move DC. And then AU, when they moved the law school to the Tenley campus, they looked at transportation impacts of that relocation in this area. One big recent previous project that we're going to be looking at as to inform our project is the Office of Planning, which led the Tenleytown Public Life Study. I believe this was done in 2019, right before the pandemic. But it looked at this area to see how it acts as a place for people. So the Office of Planning got assistance from students at the University of Maryland School of Architecture and came up with a number of proposed strategies to make facades more engaging, to designing a plaza, looking at temporary interventions, looking at enhancing the alley network, and a number of other strategies to improve public space and public life in this area. Another project that the Office of Planning is actually kicking off, mostly really concurrently with ours, is the Wisconsin Avenue Development Framework. Their study will inform new zoning to implement approved land use changes from the recently updated comp plan, to look at places to potentially add new housing. They're really focusing on the Tenleytown and the Friendship Heights Metro Station areas. Their study will include a commercial action strategy and a public realm plan, and we will be coordinating with OP on their study. And last we heard is community engagement is expected to start mid-2022, so you should be hearing more about that project as well pretty soon. Another big project that will inform our work, and we're using it as kind of a starting point for our project, is the WMATA Tenleytown Access Study. So WMATA looked at the same study area that we have to look at station access improvements to accommodate all modes of transportation for both current and future needs. It was completed in 2 phases, once in 2014, which ended with 3 different options, and then the second phase in 2016 ended with a final plan. And that 2016 report proposed a number of improvements to make some changes to safety and access at this area. Okay, so this is going through the conceptual site plan from the 2016 WMATA study. I'll kind of walk through it in detail and what it's proposing. So a number of bus improvements. It's got 5 bus bays, some mostly concentrated in near Albemarle, but some also further up. All of these would have shelters with arrival information and seating, a bus lane on Fort Drive, and then bus layover space. That's this rectangle up here on Fort Drive between Brandywine and this island. This is intended to be bus layover space, not parking. Pedestrian improvements, improved crosswalks at this intersection of 40th, Fort and Albemarle, which you'll notice is a lot shorter than what it is today, or a lot smaller than what it is today. It's a lot more squared up. An expanded pedestrian plaza at around the metro station here. A multi-use path up here along 40th Street and Fort Drive. This is for pedestrians as well as bikes. Additional green space and trees throughout the area. Reduced crossing distances, both at the intersection of Albemarle, but also providing a mid-block crossing between Brandywine and Albemarle to have this middle island. Again, we mentioned that a lot of pedestrians will cross 40th and Fort kind of between Albemarle and Brandywine, and this concept plan provides a crosswalk mid-block for those crossings. And then for the alley, this proposes a fence to separate pedestrians from being able to enter this alley. So biking improvements, we mentioned the multi-use path that's up here. Additional bike storage, both this may be, this could be bike lockers or just bike racks. As I mentioned, a new Capital Bike Share station, right next to the metro entrance, and then bike boxes and shared roadways for bikes on Albemarle. For driving and parking, improve intersection alignments, again, making the sight lines at this Albemarle 40th Fort intersection clearer. Improvements for delivery trucks to make safe deliveries for the Whole Foods and the other commercial properties that are here. Moving instead of having the break in the median down here near Albemarle, it's closer up so that drivers can turn left directly out of the Whole Foods here instead of having to go all the way down and then up and around. And then improve roadway signage throughout to match up with all the changes that are proposed. And we can come back to this if there are questions. So another change from the Metro study area is the Metro study area only went to Brandywine. So it didn't go further north than Brandywine. For this project, we are going to go all the way to Chesapeake. So this 40th and Fort between Brandywine and Chesapeake is part of our study area. We heard from the ANC. We heard from residents that we really need to think about not just the area from Brandywine, but we've got the high school here, we've got a number of other schools that are in Fort Reno Park, and we want to make sure that if we're making safety improvements, that we don't forget about this block as well. So we've included this block in our project area as well. So we'll bring. There isn't a conceptual site plan for this since the Metro study didn't include it, but through this project, we'll be bringing this part of the project area up to the same level as points south of Brandywine. So the scope of our current effort, we'll be using the WMATA plans as a starting point and taking another look at that. And refining those plans, rethinking some of the things that are proposed in there. We'll be completing a transportation analysis, and then we'll develop a concept design for the project area. We'll confirm agency roles for right-of-way, and then we'll complete environmental documentation as well. So speaking of right-of-way, DDOT does not own all of the right-of-way in the study area. WMATA owns the area on the sidewalk around the entrance, and most of the plaza south of the alley here. The National Park Service owns the land east of Fort Drive, and of course Fort Reno Park. And for Fort Drive between Brandywine and Albemarle, excuse me. Sensitive computer here. For Fort Drive between Albemarle and Brandywine, that is owned by NPS, but there's a WMATA easement. So we'll be needing to coordinate with both of those agencies as part of this project. And then the rest of it, 40th Street, Albemarle, the public space in front of the sidewalks, most of the rest of that is DDOT right away. So I mentioned our transportation analysis. We'll be looking at a number of multimodal considerations: walking, bike, transit, parking, freight, and an overall safety analysis. And then we'll be doing an analysis of traffic operations, traffic traffic levels of delay, conflict, those types of things. Some key findings that we found so far, that vehicle backups impact crosswalks and pedestrian visibility. The school drop-offs causing backups on Fort Drive. Bicycle movements are challenging due to bus interactions, all the other users around here, and that 40th Fort Albemarle intersection, which doesn't really work for anybody. Again, a lot of pedestrians crossing mid-block, and then pedestrians walking in this alley next to Wawa with not the best visibility for vehicles that are traveling on this alley. Our environmental inventory, doing a number of things that will be included in that. Land use, transportation, parks and recreational facilities. We have to survey historic resources. We have to look at wildlife, hazardous materials, water. These are all the types of things that we need to look at as part of our environmental inventory. So next steps. So today we're kicking off the project with the public, and we had a pop-up a couple weeks ago where we got some initial comments and questions from the people that were there. But this meeting really kind of kicks this project off with the public. So we're looking forward to hearing a lot more comments and ideas both today and after today. Throughout the summer, we'll be reviewing what we hear and then refining the concepts. We'll come back to the public in the fall for a public meeting where we will be presenting the draft concept plan. And then we'll get another, there'll be another opportunity at that point to comment on that draft concept plan and tell us what you think about it. And then we'll review those and then come back in winter of 2023 with the final concept plan, and that will wrap this project. Future phases after that would be design and construction. We currently don't have a timeline for when design and construction may happen. If we get more information on that, we'll certainly share that at future public meetings. We have a feedback form that's open throughout June 10th, so you've got a couple more weeks to do that. I think we already have a number of responses, but to access that, you can scan the QR code now, or you can go to surveymonkey.com/r/GC5JFFB. I'll move on, but I'll come back to this. If you're not able to scan it on your phone right now, we'll give you another opportunity later. Okay. I promise we'll come back to this. Okay, so we're about to open the question and answer portion of the meeting. Just a reminder, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand, and you can use the raise hand icon, or you can press Control-Shift-R. If you're joining by the browser, you can click that 3-dot icon, and if you're dialed in by phone, you can press *3. And if you have a question, you can put it into the Q&A feature. And again, you can, if you dial in by phone, you can press *3 to access the Q&A. We also have our Title VI form. We are required to provide this to you at all of our meetings. You're not required to fill it out, but we would certainly appreciate it if you would. This helps us get data on who is attending our meeting. It ensures that we're informing and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with Title VI. So again, you're not required to fill it out, but we are required to provide it to you. And I'll come back to this form as well, but I'll give you a couple minutes for anybody who wants to, a couple seconds for you to pull out your phone and if you'd like to fill that out now. Okay, we will come back to this. All right, so that is it for our presentation. I will open it up for question and answer.
The second question in the Q&A is relevant to logistics in the process. Is there a place where we can see everyone's comments without their names? Will the Q&A be part of the meeting transcript, and how will that be presented from here on?
So what we'll be doing is we'll be providing a summary of this public meeting, which we'll make publicly available. As far as all of the comments from this meeting, I need to check with our team that manages meetings. I think so, but I don't know for sure. Molly, if you can answer in the chat, if that's something you know, if we can share those comments.
So Ted, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A and then a couple of hands raised. Would you like us to go to the Q&A questions first?
If you're able to figure out which one kind of came first, otherwise, I don't have a preference as to where we go. I think I'd prefer to whoever went first, whether it's Q&A or hand raised, but however best you think to do that.
There was an early question as you were presenting on parking and traffic.
Okay.
And the question is there any way to dissuade parking and car traffic through the design that would improve livability and reduce carbon emissions?
I mean, I think I will say that the concept that Metro proposed in 2016, I believe is a reduction of current parking supply from today. I don't have those exact numbers to me. If you want to follow up with me later, I can get that to our asset. But certainly this is an opportunity for us to take another look at what was proposed by Metro. I think we've already had our first meetings with Metro, and they've said that there are some things that they'd like to take another look at. Yeah, I think this, that's the purpose of the meeting today, is to hear from people, and if there's something that somebody thinks that we should take another look at from whatever perspective, we certainly are open to that. So
we'll go to one more question in the Q&A, and then we'll go to the hands raised.
Okay.
Amy asks, this is more of a comment. The Tenleytown Metro Plaza is the first thing many people see when they arrive in Tenleytown. I'd like to see this project improve that area. Trees, a fountain, etc., make it inviting. Additionally, the sidewalk along the Whole Foods parking lot could use improved landscaping to make it more inviting. Finally, I agree that we need a protected bike lane, and the pedestrian car conflict point near Wawa needs to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have some raised hands, and perhaps Molly can help us go to those folks.
Yes, Kathy, you should receive a request to unmute now.
I live east of this area on Albemarle Street, and so it's great to just walk up to Whole Foods and the Metro and stores and so on. So I'm a little concerned about closing off the alley to pedestrians. Is there a part of the alley that pedestrians can use? Because the alternative is to take that little side door to Whole Foods where you go down some steps and up some steps. And if you're mobility challenged, that's a hassle. The alley it doesn't have steps in it, and that's great.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can certainly consider to see ways to improve safety for pedestrians, if whether that be striping a crosswalk or coming up with some design improvements, or but yeah, the fence is something that Metro proposed, but if there are concerns about that, again, that's what we want to hear. today. So that's something we could certainly consider.
And our next hand was S plus C.
My question, it looks from the plans as though most of the parking along Fort Drive is going away. And I'm concerned about the aquatic center. There are quite a few people who do water therapy of various sorts, and they have no other way of getting to the aquatic center except to drive. And so where are they supposed to park if they can't park there? They won't, if there's handicap parking, they don't always have handicap stickers.
Okay. This does, if I can zoom in a little bit. So this does, the WMATA plan does have some parking here in front on Fort Drive for the aquatic center. Say maybe 9 to 10 spaces, and then 4 spaces that are for handicapped access. So that's what the Metro proposes. Again, I don't have right now what that compares to current availability today, but again, that's a comment that we want to hear today, and that's something we'll certainly take into account.
There's a related Q&A comment. Amy comments, listening to this question about car traffic, there is an entire parking garage next to this project, as well as one across Wisconsin. Can we please reduce the parking here?
Yeah, again, that's something that we can consider. You know, there's a number of potential things that can happen here, and you know, I don't think we can expect that we'll satisfy everybody equally, and that, of course, but we'll do the best we can to make improvements for as many people as possible. So thank you for that comment.
David asks, staying with the theme of parking, he asks, have you considered raised crosswalks or bulb outs across Wisconsin? People park their cars in the crosswalks currently.
So with raised crosswalks, it's tough to do them on roads that get as much traffic as Wisconsin Avenue. So raised crosswalks across Wisconsin, across the streets that intersect Wisconsin, those may be opportunities there. As far as bulb outs on Wisconsin, we need to look at parking and travel lanes. You know, if Wisconsin Avenue has you know, rush hour restricted parking, bulb outs may not be possible. But you know, the Wisconsin Albemarle intersection is part of this project, and we do want to make safety improvements there as well.
Ollie asks, do any of the design proposals include a 4-way stop at Albemarle, 40th, and Fort?
Yeah, this one, let me zoom in to make sure. Let's see, just make sure. Looking at it together. That is one more. That is what this proposes. This does propose a 4-way stop at Albemarle, 40th, and Fort.
And part of what that proposal does is squares up that intersection, and so it's not the offset intersection that exists today. And so I think that allows for that stop to be introduced.
Yeah.
Ted, there's a lot of discussion about the alley, and
Okay.
you touched on this earlier. Holly asks, what is the thinking behind putting a fence up at the west side of the Wawa alley? It is to go just across the alley itself, but not the Metro Plaza, correct?
Yeah, so we can zoom into what's proposed in the WMATA plan. Show what that fence actually is. So the proposal from the WMATA project, if you see this, if you see this bolded black line, that is a fence that separates the alley from the Metro Plaza. So instead of getting off the Metro here and then walking through the alley, you would have to go through. And another thing this proposes is to open up what's currently there to make this easier for you to be able to go down, and then provide a crossing of the alley, and then you can continue on your way instead of walking in the alley. Again, if we heard the previous comment, maybe there's a desire to provide an opening in this fence here so that somebody can walk through and then walk up to Whole Foods that way. But I think that the point of this fence is right now there's nothing, so a pedestrian can walk into this alley really at any point. And I think the point of this fence is to separate the pedestrians from the drivers in the alley, but also if there, where there is an opening, to make sure that there are places where kind of channelize the pedestrian movement to make it easier for a driver to anticipate where a pedestrian may be. But again, this is a proposal from the WMATA. Anything that's here, it's all fair game for reconsideration. So the fence is certainly something that we can take another look at.
And I think you touched on Claire's comment in the Q&A, which is she agrees with the current commenter regarding allowing pedestrians to use the alley. Going into Whole Foods from the parking lot in that staircase that was previously mentioned is scary.
Okay.
And I think that's the balance of the comment related to the alley. And then there are a couple of other comments or questions in the Q&A, including, will the study take into account the likely redevelopment of the block and future loading, parking, egress, etc.?
Which
I think this is referring
future development are we talking about?
I think this is referring to redevelopment of the block where Whole Foods,
Okay.
Wawa, etc. are.
So if that ever gets redeveloped, the developer will have to accommodate all loading on site. That will all have to, so trucks will have to pull into that property, head in, so they can't back into that through public space. And then when they exit, they can't back out. So they have to, head in, head out. So that provides improved safety. So there are a number of things through our design review and through our development review process that will make sure that loading activities are improved from what may take place today. Another thing is these conversations about using the alley network as a way to access Whole Foods. Again, we don't know we don't know what development will be there, if it includes a Whole Foods or grocery store or who knows what, but we would want to make sure that there were clear entrances to, because really instead of walking into the alley and having kind of the main entrance to the Whole Foods be off of the alley. We would want the entrance to a Whole Foods or whatever retail ends up in this location to be off of 40th Street or to be off of Albemarle Street. Well, not Albemarle, but we wouldn't want to create this situation today where people feel like an alley is the best way to access the Whole Foods as a pedestrian. We'd want them to be able to do that from the sidewalk that's on 40th Street.
So we have two hands raised. Let's pivot over to those people, and then we'll come back to David's comment in the Q&A.
Okay.
And you should receive a request to unmute now.
Q&A function, so I asked the question in there as well. Thanks for the presentation. I want to know what the budget you have for your concept development, which you said will be finalized in the winter of 2023, and what budget is there for this project as a whole?
So we have budget to do the current project that we're working on now. As far as future phases are not currently funded.
Well, I want to know what your budget is, not just tell me that you have a budget, but what are the numbers?
Let me follow up with you on email.
Okay.
And I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Can you find my email?
There is my email address. If you want to shoot me an email address, we can follow up with you that way. But we do have enough budget to work with our consultants to get the concept design.
Okay, sorry. Oh, I see. Yeah, let me write that down. Thank you. I will.
And
do
this
that.
project is federally funded with a local match, so we'll have to go through federal funding requirements as well as local, and that takes into place during the environmental phase, which I talked about. We'll be coordinating with the State Historic Preservation Office. We've already met with them on this project. We'll be coordinating with the National Park Service as well, and NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act. I'm sure there's
Right,
somebody. Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning that. I mean, that is going to be really challenging. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
I will send you an email.
Okay, great. And since you seem familiar with NEPA, we're going to be going through what we think is the categorical exclusion process. This might be either a CE 2 or a CE 3. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next hand, GH.
And again, I'm with the Washington Area Bicycle Association, but I grew up in the Ward, and I have biked and walked through this intersection. I can't even tell you how many times throughout my life. So really glad to see that y'all are taking up this project to make it better, because it sure should be better. A few thoughts that I wanted to pass on and just sort of direct your attention to. It's not so much a question. But from a pedestrian perspective, like, I love the wider plaza. This is a place that is so easy to drive through, but we don't need good driving access for good transit. We need good walking and good biking. And if you're coming by bus, it should be seamless. So I, again, appreciate the effort going into this. Somebody mentioned this, but more raised crosswalks. I understand buses are going over these, and some of the nearby streets are arterials, so that limits where you can do those. But this is, as you said, a school, 5,000 kids staff showing up every day. This should be first priority, a safe place to walk. And then every car that is in this space is a guest, and they know it by the design of the space. Turning to biking, this is I think, understand that you're looking at this scope, but sort of in the box, but outside the box. 39th Street and 41st Street are part of a good neighborhood bikeway that sort of wiggles through parallel to Wisconsin Avenue. So I think as you all move forward, I would really encourage you to think, what is the seamless way that somebody gets from 39th Street across Nebraska up of Albemarle Street, and then through here. And with that in mind, I was there. I remember seeing this design in 2016, and with no disrespect to anyone from WMATA who worked on this, it's a very silly design from a bicycling perspective, because it acknowledges that mixing with buses isn't great, with this odd center running shared use path that I don't think, as I see it, most people would use, because it has a lot of sharp turns and it's in the middle of the road. But then that only goes half of the way, so you're sharing the space with buses anyway. So I think whatever we can do to eliminate that discontinuity and make it a continuous experience for bikes would be great. Thanks much for the work, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
We actually have one more hand.
Oh.
John, you shall receive a request to unmute now.
My question was about what looks like a pinch point to me, that intersection of 40th and Albemarle, which showed up red on your traffic flow map when we have more lanes now. And I wonder how it's going to be less red when we have fewer lanes. That's question number one. And question number two is, for people to use the metro more, it's often handy to have to be able to drop people off or pick people up from there. Where in this plan will there be at least equal, if not more, space for that to be done? Pick up and drop off.
Well, as far as fewer lanes, this doesn't, for Albemarle, it doesn't propose to remove any travel lanes. There still would be one travel lane in each direction. So that wouldn't change. What may change is the parking that's on and going to the metro proposal. What the metro proposal for Albemarle is, and let me zoom in again.
I was seeing the pinch point more on 40th and.
Oh, okay. Let me get to that. So right now, 40th and Fort, Fort is, one lane up, and 40th is one lane northbound for Fort and one lane southbound for 40th. That would be the same here. There'd be, one northbound and one southbound lane here at the combined 40th and Fort. What this would do is make that size in the intersection smaller. So something that's contributing to the delays of that intersection is cars not having the best sight lines to see each other. Again, I mentioned if you're on 40th Street and you want to continue south, what you have to do, let me get to a current conditions. So if you're on 40th and you want to continue south, you have to go down and then you have to make this turn and then turn again and go down. And that takes time versus, just being able to go straight if this intersection was, more squared off. So we're looking at ways to make the intersection smaller to make it easier for people to get through it. And that's true for cars as well as pedestrians. It would be a shorter crossing, especially up here. And less intersection space on Albemarle would allow for more travel lane space. So there would be more room for people to be there without if it is congested, there's more room for people. There's more storage for people to be there where they're not blocking the intersection.
That's very good. The squaring off thing sounds like a very good idea. How about the picking up and dropping off? Would it be feasible, without destroying some of the other advantages of this, to have a sort of a pickup I don't want to say lane because that implies going through, but a turnout on 40th, say, so that people can drop off or pick up people going to or coming from the metro.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can certainly look at.
Otherwise,
One-
what I'm afraid of is that people will just block that right turn lane on
Yeah.
40th. And I bet that'll happen if you don't provide some other way to do that, to do the picking up and dropping off.
Mhm.
Ed,
Okay.
would you like to go back to some of the Q&A questions?
Yeah, sure.
As long as there's no other raised hands that want to chime in on this topic. David asks, will there be a red light camera at the Wisconsin Avenue and Albemarle intersection? People idle in the crosswalk currently.
That is something I honestly don't know if there's a red light camera there right now. So that's something that we can consider as a potential change at that intersection.
This next question does go back to this question of pick up and drop off at Tenleytown. There is no waiting area or kiss and ride. Can such an area be designated and protected?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can certainly consider as far as who uses that space and when. So
Holly asks, can you talk about the security features of the plan, especially at night?
well, I mean, we'll look through the area as far as improved lighting. One of the people we'll talk through is our streetlight team and see if there are opportunities for improved streetlight. If there are other ideas you have on places that are potentially you feel are locations that are really unsafe, or ideas that you think we should consider as ways to improve safety, we'd love to hear that. Yeah, I think one big way of improving safety is lighting. But if you have other ideas, we'd love to hear that.
And there's a related question or comment. Has your study taken into account pedestrian safety, especially at night while waiting for buses? The area around Wawa is pretty deserted at night, unlike the areas on Wisconsin Avenue.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can we'll look into that and see if there are things that we can do to improve safety there.
Going back a few minutes, there was a question about raised crosswalks across Albemarle on either side of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll have to work with our traffic engineers if that's something that people are interested in seeing. I know that Wisconsin probably gets too much traffic for the levels are too high. I think for Wisconsin, for Albemarle, to be honest, I'm not sure. So I think we can look at that and see if that's potentially an option for safety.
The next question is related. Why are cars getting the preferred mode treatment? This is a massive pedestrian area. Pedestrians must be allowed to use the alley.
I mean, I think we want to make sure that that they're able to do that safety. I mean, I think one thing that's an issue about the alley network is, there's this, let me get to it. I think we have it further back. In a virtual wall. So at this corner, there's not really the best visibility. So that's kind of one concern is, you know, if you've got a driver that's coming down and making the turn here, you know, they may not expect a pedestrian to be here. So I think we want to make sure that if that there are pedestrians in the right now, they just kind of there's you know, pedestrians will kind of walk all over this alley, which we want to make sure that pedestrians, you know, are safe. So to protect them from cars, you know, if there is desire to continue to use the alley, especially if it provides the best access to Whole Foods at this point, there are certainly things that we can do to improve safety. So I mean, you know, that's one way to provide safety for is to have, you know, separate cars and pedestrians. But there is certainly, that's not the only way of improving safety. So we can certainly look at ways to better protect pedestrians who are in the alley.
And a commenter raised this point earlier that even the paving treatments or the way the alley looks and feels can signal to someone driving that pedestrians are primary in that space, even if cars are also allowed there. So I think that those are the kinds of design treatments that the team is looking at closely for these alleyways.
Yeah. And that's something we can consider. I mean, it is, the alley is, that alley is public. Most of the alley that wraps around the Whole Foods building is public. So there are things that we can consider to look at.
So there are a couple of comments. There was a comment that agreed with people saying that people with mobility impairments will need to access Whole Foods via the alley. There's a question about what is the plan for the median strip as it is now loaded with trash? Is there any consideration for how to improve this problem?
Yeah, so what's proposed here is eliminating the median and then providing the center island and then having a bike and pedestrian path instead of the median. So if it's, you know, used as a you know, in a transportation purpose, you know, that may help. But we can talk to the Main Street about trash and maintenance concerns there, since I don't know what their capacity to deal with that is.
There's a question or a comment by Amy who says they agree with the commenter about the bike lanes and making them more usable. Also, given the volume of kids who will be crossing the road and knowing they likely aren't going to walk all the way to the end of the block to cross, might you consider a mid-block crosswalk?
Yeah, so that's what proposed here. There's a number of mid-block crosswalks that are proposed in the WMATA site plan. You know, some may think this would meet that, other people may not. So I think what we want, that's one of the things we're going to look at is how does this work for mid-block crossings? Would this serve those needs, or should we think of a mid-block crossing somewhere else? But I think that's something that we definitely want to provide because we do see that. So we want to make sure that if there's that desire to cross mid-block, that that we're able to provide a crossing to do that safely.
And this comment suggests that it might be parallel with the pool entrance, and this graphic shows that it's pretty close.
Yeah, I think the pool entrance is, yeah, it's certainly, you know, this certainly provides it, but we can look at lining up I think this is the pool entrance. Yeah, because this is So yeah, we can look at, the thing is, I think with the Metro project, they wanted to make sure that there was handicap parking there. So, you can't have a crosswalk and needs to be certain space in this parking. But we can certainly look at this location and see if we can maybe put it closer to the aquatic center if that's if that's a draw.
There are a couple of questions by SNC. There is a bus stop in front of the Dunkin' Donuts that could be repurposed, and I don't understand what this last part says as the start of something, and perhaps the commenter could clarify what they mean by that. The next comment from SNC is twice a day, 5,000 students walk through this area. Shouldn't pedestrians get priority over cars?
Yeah, and I think we want to make sure that, and there are a number of improvements here for pedestrians. The mid-block crosswalk, the extended pedestrian plaza. But if there are locations where either in this, in the WMATA plan, or existing conditions where pedestrian needs are especially not being met, we certainly want to hear that, and we can take a look at that.
And there's a follow-up question. Have there been any pedestrian injuries in the alley due to a conflict with a car?
We are still going through the crash data as part of our analysis, so I don't know right now, but if you follow up with me on email, we can look into that and get back to you.
There's a comment, make the alley a quote, Wunnerf, and I think this is what we've been talking about a little bit.
Yeah, make it like a shared space. Yeah. Yeah, that's something we can certainly consider.
Anne asks, among the many considerations and proposed changes, have you established priorities?
I mean, I think we want to, it really depends on what we hear both today and after today. We're going to look through the comments and determine what the priorities are from the resident and the community perspective. We'll be working with WMATA. They have their own priorities and things they'd like to see here. We'll talk with a variety of people in DDOT, people on the bike team, people in stormwater, people in the Capital Bike Share team, as well as the team that works on bike lanes, a number of other, traffic engineers and other people in DDOT. So we'll kind of take all those things we hear from all those people and put them together, and that will help us aggregate what the priorities are for improvement, and what from the WMATA project or previous plans, as well as I want to mention that Office of Planning Public Life Study, which did a lot of work of a lot of really good work of observing how people interact with this space. That'll be a big input to inform our project and to see what improvements we should make to best meet the needs of the people that are using the space.
Ted, there are a couple of hands raised. Let's go over to David and then Amy.
David, you should receive a request to unmute now.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. This is great. I think this intersection at Wisconsin at Albemarle, this whole area is, a mess currently, and it's extremely dangerous, especially, right during school, when school starts and it ends. I mean, there's elementary school on one side, and there's Wilson on the other side. So I would just continue to encourage you all to think of that people rather than the cars that are going through this area. Put a preference on DC residents who live in the area rather than Maryland commuters who are racing through AU Park. That's why I'm encouraging you folks to think about, raised crosswalks across Albemarle and in front of Wilson and the Aquatic Center, and just really trying your best to slow down the traffic here because it's just extremely dangerous to try to cross any of these streets with 4, 5, and 6-year-old kids. So just keep thinking about us in the neighborhood and just like giving us priority over the commuters that are racing through here. So thanks.
Thank you.
Amy, you shall receive a request to unmute now.
Again, thank you guys for doing this and for all the community engagement. I just want to build on what I was saying about the mid-block crosswalk earlier. I'm not saying get rid of what you have proposed there. I'm saying add an additional crosswalk because these kids are like ants. They're just going to cross the street whatever the shortest path is that leads to where they want to go, and at least give them a fighting chance to cross safely. So I do think an additional crosswalk, I don't think I was clear, would be helpful. And to the person who was commenting earlier about the, center bike lanes, maybe you can get rid of all the parking along Whole Foods, right, on that one side, and make that a bike lane going in one direction, and have more of a median in the middle with benches and whatever, but then put the second bike lane kind of opposite where the buses park, going toward Wilson. But anyway, I mean, look, this is not I'm not a planner, I'm not a transportation person. But it just feels like you guys can be a little more creative with the bike lanes and a little more protective of pedestrians in that area. But again, thank you guys for this, for the opportunity to comment. The only thing I would say in closing is this really is the gateway in some ways to Tenleytown. It is the gateway to Wilson High School. For many people, it is the gateway to Deal. It is the gateway to the Ward 3 pool. And we should make it look regal, make it look robust in a way that really prioritizes what we in the community care about, which is protecting our pedestrians, encouraging cycling and that kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks.
We have one more hand, Tom.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Quinn. I'm one of the ANC 3E commissioners, following on the heels of my fellow commissioner. Would like to just really reiterate that bike lanes in this, we actually have bike lanes in there now, and they are completely useless because they're not protected. So any bike lanes in this stretch absolutely have to be protected, or they will not be useful and safe bike infra. But I actually raised my hand to mention, Ted, at the start of your presentation, you mentioned the balance in the Metro Rail ridership. That entire actually stretch of the Red Line is actually the most balanced section of the system in terms of ins and outs and during both the AM and PM rush hour. But contrary to that, our Capital Bike Share Station is actually the most unbalanced bike share station in the city, which is not a coincidence because it happens to be the highest bike share station in the system. And if you've ever ridden a Capital Bike Share, you know how heavy they are and how difficult they are to get up a hill. So we've had just chronic issues the last couple of years, which I think have a lot more to do with the vendor than anything else. But the 4 Capital Bike Share stations, we used to have 1, we now have 4 Capital Bike Share stations in Tenleytown, chronically run out of bikes. Even on the rare occasions when Capital Bike Share refills the bikes, they're usually gone by lunchtime and we're out of bikes. So I think a structural thing we need to fix on this is we need a really big Capital Bike Share station at the Tenleytown Metro. I mean, we need a 60 or 80. And I know Capital Bike Share pushes back on that, say, well, your ridership isn't that high. It doesn't matter because the bikes are all leaving and nobody can find a bike at lunchtime after the bikes have been refilled. So part of the design needs to be finding space for a very large bike share station near the Metro because the bikes just drain out of the neighborhood and we need to find a way to permanently, at least try to permanently remedy that. So that is the comment. One other quick comment you didn't have in your presentation is the Department of Homeland Security runs shuttle buses. I mean, I don't know if it's on the books or off the books, but they do run a shuttle bus between the Metro and their facility over on Massachusetts and Nebraska. So you may want to just keep that in mind as
Okay.
well. That was my comment. Thank you for the presentation, Annette.
Do you know how often that bus comes? I mean, I don't know if there's a public, like, I'm assuming that shuttle is only for employees, and it's not for the public.
That is my understanding. In fact, if like 10 years ago, we tried to get at some point we engaged with them when they were looking at redoing their campus, tried to get them to work with American University because their shuttle route covers the exact same stops as the American University shuttle. It's just kind of absurd that they're running separate buses covering the same route. And neither party really wanted to work together on that. So I think it's just an AM and PM rush hour bus, but I don't believe there's anything even posted on the bus stops. I don't think they have a formal sign up for their route, but they do run a bus route. I believe there may be a private school that runs a bus route through there too. I mean, you guys may want to go up there in the morning. I have a feeling there's a private school that's also running a bus route through there, but Homeland Security definitely has vans they run back and forth.
Well, we'll look into that, and if we'll try to get kind of just an understanding of what their operations are and how often those buses are coming. And if you have any links there to somebody at DHS, I think we'd love to have that. So, and that goes for any other. I'll mention. I'll just go to that slide real quick. So yeah, so if there are any other shuttles that are not on this slide that anybody knows about, we certainly would love to get that and to make sure that we're capturing all of that shuttle use as well. So thanks.
There are a handful of additional questions in the Q&A if you'd like to go to those.
Yeah, sure.
Q says there are suggesting more trash cans all around. Wawa creates a lot of trash. Please make it easy for folks to dispose of their trash.
Okay, that's something we can look into.
Ronald asks, will materials, details, street furniture, etc., be consistent throughout, regardless of ownership? This might be an opportunity to establish a Tenleytown identity.
Yeah, I think we would want to use standard materials, things that are in our kind of our toolkit, but there's a lot of great things that can be done with standard materials. So I think that's something that we can look at, and that's something that we can share in future meetings is more information on what types of things could be used here. And that's part of the conversations we'll be having with our agency partners.
And a related question by Gordon, are changes made as a result of this study designed to be temporary, i.e. stick and paint? If so, can you set up future changes from that? For example, planning for paving tiles in the street surface if you choose a car light or no car space.
I mean, I think that the materials that we use will depend on what the design ends up looking like. But this is intended to be a construction project at the end of the process. But construction can take a while, and I think some people might think more than a while to happen. So we will be looking for opportunities for quick build or temporary improvements that we can make while a more permanent solution is advanced through the project development process. So I think that's one thing that we'll be looking at as well. Are all of these ideas might be great and everybody might like them, but if we can't do them now, we also want to look to see what changes we can make in the shorter term to improve safety while the more longer term things take their time to be done. So that's another thing. If there are ideas on that front, we'll be looking at that, but we want to certainly hear ideas from the public on, if there's something that you think we can do and do quickly. We'd love comments like that as well.
Amy chimes in on the same topic. Also, speaking of standard materials, could we use this as an opportunity to have some nice streetlights that don't look industrial, nice light poles that are more decorative and inviting?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we can look at. Again, if you have ideas of something you've seen in another part of the district that you think is really great and you'd love to have in Tenleytown, whether it's, a design of a light pole or, something used as, a sidewalk pavement or whatever, let us know and we can certainly, we can look into the feasibility of using that.
And then a couple of comments regarding bus service and shuttles. One is a clarification from earlier. The Dunkin' Donuts stop could be the start of the H&M buses instead of on Fort Drive.
Okay. We can take a look at that.
And then from Sarah, I wonder if there will be a Tenley shuttle to City Ridge Wegmans just down Wisconsin.
I think we would have to look at the development. I don't know if that is part of their development. I know that's only a few blocks. I don't know if there'll be a shuttle for a Wegmans. But again, something that we can look at what was proposed in that development and see if that's something that they suggested.
A comment from Holly: pedestrians, bikes, and buses should be encouraged. Cars, not so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Holly clarifies that the 96 and the 33 goes to City Ridge. Thank you. And then Tom asks, how about undergrounding the utility lines?
So I think that's something that was suggested as part of the Metro project. The 2016 project did have a cost estimate for improving that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but undergrounding the utilities does add a significant cost to the project. So it's something we can consider, but it definitely makes the project more expensive.
One last comment is Tom saying that the 30s buses do run frequently. And that's the balance of the Q&A box.
Okay, and I have 8:28. So if there are any last minute questions or comments that anyone has, now's the time. I will make one last plug for our feedback form. This is open through June 10th. Give you a couple minutes for that, or a couple seconds for that, if that's something you haven't done yet. I'll also give a couple seconds for our Title VI form. Again, you are not required to fill it out, but we are required to provide it to you. And we appreciate anyone who is who completes this form. This really does help us out. We'll give a couple more seconds for that. And then lastly, I'll give a couple more seconds. That's my contact information. We'll be having our next public meeting in the fall. But if you have any comments or questions after today that you still didn't feel like you got a question answered, you got your question answered, or you wanted to follow up with me or the project team, that's my contact information. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. Okay, and with that, it's 8:30. So Jason, anything else from the raise hands or Q&A?
Not that I can see. So I think we're good.
All right. Well, then we will close the meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy your evening, and we'll look forward to hearing from you and working with you as we continue this project. So thank you.